Thank you very much for the introduction, and I welcome all my panelists who are with me, and a very good morning to all the distinguished guests who are going to be here, who are here and who are through video conferencing, who are joining through video conferencing. So before I start this session, okay, when I got this invitation, is it okay? Okay. So before I start the session, when this topic was given to me, I thought it was cybersecurity, robotics and drones in security, safety and loss prevention. And now they clarified it that it includes everything. The reason why I say this is, cybersecurity for drones and robotics itself has become very important today because of the networking. And I think that was raised by Wing Commander Sudhakar when he asked that question for the last member. The session, we actually had an initial discussion on how this session how are we going to take up this session, and one of the most important parts is, yes, as usual, we'll have their panel members speak for about 10 minutes, and then we will raise some pertinent questions which the panel members can put in their viewpoints. One of the most important viewpoint we are looking at is manufacturing, because that's going to be very critical in whatever, whether you're talking about robotics or cybersecurity or drones, because we see a lot of companies selling a lot of products to us and they bring technology to us. But any technology that you buy, I think we are only looking at the money value. I mean, let me give you one instance of this. India is looking at building supercomputers. And without that, obviously, I'm looking at quantum and things like that. What has happened today is there is a discussion that is going on whether the processors should be indigenous or we get the processors from abroad and then build the boards. Now, this is a very dicey question because today you might get the processor at low cost, and what we have seen in Ukraine-Russia war, we have seen that countries can block their technology at any point in time, and simply just by signing one dotted line, it's done. Now, after that, how are we going to survey? Okay, so today's technology, yes, today is not going to be like you use this MiG-21 Bison for 50 years and claim that they are fine. But we have lost so many brave soldiers because of that. Still we claim that we are doing a wonderful job. So this is going to be the problem if you do a transfer of technology. Okay, so this has to be addressed at a very large scale. So that is the important question I'm going to ask the panel members today on this. So with that context, I think I will start off in the order in which they were invited. I would like to have Wing Commander Sudhakar, his views about drones, cybersecurity, and robotics in the areas of safety and loss prevention as well as security. To you, sir.
Check. Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, IISSM, for having given me this opportunity to express or share my views on these aspects which are very, very critical for next generation of nation building. Having said this, let me start with an anecdote of sorts. Yesterday is always boring. If it is not for art, success, beauty, or love, everything else about yesterday is boring. And tomorrow is always curious. Everybody wants to know what's in store for us tomorrow, the next moment. It also brings an anxiety in us. Curiosity and anxiety is related to safety and security. It has a very deep and innate relationship. And that's where we need to dwell on. I'm not here to talk about yesterday's security. In fact, the question that I asked in the last round, most of you must have heard it. Those security defense mechanisms were based on yesterday's frameworks. And it's boring to me. It's of no use. If you say that I've built a fogging machine to contain yesterday's burglary, When the thief knows that there is a fogging machine there, he's not going to walk inside, yes, but he's probably going to walk inside with a vision device which is going to defeat fog. Otherwise, he's just plain stupid to walk into it, isn't it? That's the art of burglary. Always invent, innovate, and step up to the challenges. And when we talk about the paradigm of security, we're talking it from that front. So when I'm talking about security in robotics or security in drones, I will tell you a small story. The biggest thing that has happened in the last 100 years is definitely World War II. Everything else is secondary. We have not seen that kind of annihilation, that kind of violence, that kind of scale in our history. Yes, we've not seen, our generation has not seen. But believe you me, we still learn it. We still learn lessons from it. And can any one of you tell how that war was won or lost? If you thought the tanks did it, no. If you thought the fighter planes of the Second World War did it, no. Actually, it was information that was key to decide who was the victor and who was the loser. And you might be surprised, for those of you who didn't understand, in 1940s, it was information which decided the victor in World War II. The world didn't know this till Edward Snowden and the likes disclosed this. It was kept a secret. Entire Cold War was fought on information warfare. And to elaborate on this, maybe you might doubt, probably you might say, no, I don't agree with it, I'll tell you the fact. In around 1941, at the coast of Paris, France, Britain was almost at the verge of getting wiped out. Hitler delayed just 2 days for some strange reason. England would have been history. That was the stage where Britain was in when America entered the war. And people say America entered the war and everything else changed. No, that didn't happen. It was round about that time Alan Turing and his teammates broke the German Enigma machine. The entire Allied power knew what German plans were much before they would do. In fact, in short, what I started with you was tomorrow. The British knew the Germans tomorrow much before the Germans did. And that's what decided the fate of that war. So information is central to security. That's what decided World War II. Today, that has changed. That paradigm has changed. We talk about intelligence. And why is it so different is because yesterday's information still depended on human brains. But today's is definitely not. Most of you think that you're already conversant with AI, and most of you think that we know AI. But do you? Our fridges have AI, our TVs have AI, our washing machines have AI. But what sort of an AI is that? Is it really an AI? Do we really understand the very definition of AI? How many of we really know the definition of AI? Maybe if I ask, probably you'll say the definition. But how many of you believe in that definition? And then accept what has been sold to you is really AI. What has been sold to you today as AI is not AI at all. When the first definition of AI was done, it was defined as the ability of a machine to deliver intelligence at par or beyond what a human being can deliver. Which means, what is being sold to you today, can it stand some kind of test? We call ourselves educated graduates and postgraduates and doctorates. One of the fundamentals of science is testability and measurability. If some executive comes and tells you that I have based an AI solution, what is the testability for that? Does it pass any test? Or we plain simply accept because somebody told that this is AI? That's the first question that you need to ask. And when you talk about testability, what tests that it should pass? These are defined, by the way. This is not created by me. And these are accepted in the industry. We need to understand this, because the moment when we don't understand this, we are getting into a security nightmare. You think you've got AI, but probably, boss, you have not. In the thought process that you've got AI, you've landed into something else. And does that mean that AI doesn't exist? It exists. It exists for a group, and it doesn't exist for you. I'll give you another analogy. 3,000 odd British officers ruled India, which had almost 30 crore people for almost 200 years. How did this miracle happen? They had better weapons, and you had less. Probably you were fighting with bows, arrows, swords, and whatnot, and probably inferior kind of cannons. It was only technology. The Industrial Revolution powered Britain, catapulted it to a stage wherein it went on to brag and say that the sun never sets on the British Empire. Now, today your AI is inferior to somebody else's AI. Welcome to East India Company Part 2. That's what you're going to be digitally colonized. That's the threat that you're facing with. And that's the safety and security of tomorrow that you need to understand today. You cannot work on it after it has hit you. Another thing that I want to bring onto the table is when the first atom bombs were made, India had around 30 years luxury to make its own. But the first time when intelligence singularity is going to be breached, you will not get another day to breach it yourself with an indigenous framework. You better be there first. That's why Putin said, the one who controls intelligence will control tomorrow's world. And that's why it's very important for you to define what AI is, understand the power of information, and the role that it can play in tomorrow's drones and robotics. And I'll come to that quickly before I wind up. Drones for me represent the state-of-the-art air power. And why air power? Because today the one who controls the air controls the narrative of warfare, because you cannot walk on land if your air is not safe. And if tomorrow's drones are going to be autonomous, you know what happened with the Balakot strikes. The next day, Abhinandan landed there. The whole narrative changed. The Prime Minister of this country had to pull all strings down to bring one man back. What will happen if your adversary were to involve in autonomous, unmanned combat? Your people, the rich asset that the military has, the only edge that India has over the world is its people. Nowhere a Kargil hill is gone and conquered with bullets flying down your chest. It's only the Indian army which can do that. The rest of them will employ tactics, technology, delay. They will employ every resource, but not life. But Indians offer life at any stake and go and capture it. And that edge is what is at threat when we're talking robotics. Because that's what tomorrow's robotics is going to bring to warfare. And if that is the disruption that it is going to cost to military, businesses, less said. And one more thing, like one of my previous speakers, I heard them saying that India is a very cost-sensitive market. We do cost-benefit analysis. Sorry, we need to get over that mindset. We cannot do cost-benefit analysis in this warfare. We need to be before time there. Because you can do only cost-benefit analysis when you have the luxury of catching up or somebody is going to give you that time. That's not going to happen. That's where I will close my first round of session, thanking the moderator for having given this opportunity to tell you the importance of information, to tell you the importance of intelligence in next generation of security concerns and the safety, upholding the sovereignty of India, more importantly, the digital sovereignty of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Wing Commander Sudhakaran, for bringing out some two relevant points. One is on the artificial intelligence part. And probably the other is on how India's human intelligence might be overtaken by artificial intelligence with swarms of drones and things like that. So it's very, very relevant in this context. So let's look at the other viewpoint from Colonel Ashish. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, not yet afternoon. Good morning, everybody. And I also would like to thank IISSM for this opportunity to be here and to express my views. The points which have been brought out by Wing Commander Sudhakaran, I think, are very relevant in today's world, and it is definitely something that we need to look at, especially as far as self-reliance goes. And if you look at India's history over the since independence, I think we have achieved a lot of independence, or let's say dependence on own self in critical things like you have space research and even defense manufacturing to some extent. But this is one area which is relatively new. You call it robotics, drones, and artificial intelligence, machine learning. These areas are new. There are a lot of academies, there are a lot of teaching centers which are coming up with it, but then does it really, is the technology or is the processes, are they being implemented by the on ground or not, is something which is questionable, especially in today's world. Because most of the drones that you see today in operation are not built by us. It's generally imported. Most of them are Chinese. And so we really need to look at whether or not, where is our level of Atmanirbharta, or whatever you'd like to call it. But related to this particular topic, one thing that, let me also bring in a little bit of a, you can say, a comic role, in the sense you may have heard this kind of joke going around on the internet, on WhatsApp and other forwards, about this poor old banker who wanted to go on a holiday. And because being an old banker, retired and living on pension, he left a note with some 1,000 rupees on the table and said that, "Dear robber," or the person who he expected will come in to his house, "Dear robber, please keep a note. Please know that I am a poor retired banker and I do not really have too much of money or gold or stuff for you." But he also lists out a list of people who are around that area, across the road, and so floor is a politician, this guy is a hawala dealer, so. So he gives out 3-4 names. He comes back from his month-long holiday and he gets a stack of 1 lakh rupees with a note which says, "Thank you, dear banker. Here's a little bit of thank you note from us, and there's a cake in the fridge," and all that kind of stuff. So basically the thing is that information which is given to the robber or the person who's going to come in and attack you is something which is very important to the robber himself. And if he can get it free, it's so much easier. Today's the technology, using so many devices that we have at home, so many connected items that we have at home, so many IoTs that are going around, the vulnerabilities are that much more. I don't know if you have heard about this doll which was out. I think it was called Sila or something, and which was actively used by pedophiles to target children. And there was an order by the agencies in US to the parents to actively destroy the doll, because it was a big threat to the children who were using it. Today, there are so many people who are using vacuum cleaners, who are using toys which have got some kind of intelligence. I'll not say artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence itself has a lot of connotations, but then people pass it off as artificially intelligent toys. But whatever, they do have a camera, they do have a communication system. Your fridges have communication system. Today, it's a big thing to have a car where you can switch on the car from remote. There's so many people using so many devices without even thinking. Your watches themselves have a lot of possible vulnerabilities. The problem is that we do not really look at all these items as threats. We look at these things from our perspective of utility. But the question is that if somebody wants to use them for their misdeeds, it's so much easier today to do that. And why is it so much easier? So if you really look into the device development and how they are created, all these items which are being made for human use or human utility, they are not being created by people who have security interest in mind. They are being created by people who have got the utility or the use, or they're looking at the use case of those particular items. So when they build up the thing, or they're building the software behind it, forget the software, the hardware, the firmware, the software, all three of them are developed with an aim of producing a product, not looking at the threat perspectives. But the threat is inherent, because the communication systems are the same. And whether you have a computer system or a vacuum cleaner at home, somebody who wants to, or forget a vacuum cleaner, you have so many CCTVs in place today. And CCTVs, remotely controlled, remotely stored, are actively used by people for misuse or for any kind of misuse, abuse, whatever. So my point is that we need to build up the thinking or the kind of the process of right from the root cause, right from the base, when you're developing the hardware, that from that point onwards, when you're developing the software, you must keep in mind the possible threats which may be there and build in some kind of security, these things like you have in computers to a large extent today. But then the computers have gone through something like 30 odd years of evolution, and even today they are, there is no computer that can be said to be threatless. So in the Indian Army, we used to be very proud that our network was totally isolated from the internet at that time. And we went on like this for many a year. But the point is that in today's world, you cannot be isolated. You look at the first internet, which was again developed by the US defense. But then the point is, you cannot be isolated in today's world. You have to have interactions. And the moment you open a door for interaction, you're opening a door for some kind of threat or abuse or something happening. So if you look at it, the way the development process goes, I mean, you should start right at the very base, right at each stage of development, you should look at threat analysis. And I think the same principles follow. Like what I think one of the previous speakers was talking about, ISO 27001 and all, the principles remain the same. You may have different standards, you may have more enhanced standards, more checks, different kinds of security assurances that may come in, but the principles remain the same. And I think one of the basic requirements which we do not do today is risk analysis of your product. Whatever little product that you're making, you are not looking at it from a risk perspective, and that has to come in if you want to develop systems which are safe and which can be really used without thinking by any home owner for that matter. So primarily that is, I think, a key area of concern as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion. So whatever that we may be building, whether we are building a swarm of drones or any kind of robots, we need to have a system in place so that we should have the teaching in place. Again, there is no formalized teaching, really speaking. You have so many universities coming out with different schemes, different kind of courses, but do we really have a standard as far as education goes for AI or machine learning or anything of these kind of things? I think this is also an area that we need to look at, which we really are not looking as a country. So Atmanirbhar is something that we need to go in for. We need to develop that policies and procedures so that we can go get into a stage where we can safely go forward and say that, okay, this is something that we have developed and it is something that we can use. Thank you. I think that's about all for.
Thank you, Colonel Ashish. One of the important points that he mentioned was security by design. Now, let me share you one of our personal experience. of you has got your mobile phone, and there is one company which makes one of the processors of this mobile phone. I don't want to name the company. So when we were working with them we were asking them for some trusted computing. So for trusted computing, we need certain information of that processor. Now, we are approached up to the Prime Minister's office level, and still, Minister's office, Prime Minister's office level, still the company is not willing to part with that information. We are not even asking for technology. We are just asking for one information. Now, that processor is being used by almost all your mobile phones. Now, we still do not have idea of what is the vulnerability that is there in that mobile phone, how they are trapping information from that mobile phone, if at all they do once. But still, we do not have, in spite of the pressure from the highest level from the government of India. So the reason why I agree with Colonel Ashish about Atmanirbhar. We don't have Atma Vishwas first. After that, only Atmanirbhar. Okay, so we should go with Atma Vishwas, and then let's go with Atmanirbhar. But even to get our Atma Vishwas right, we need to prove certain points that information is not coming to us. Okay, so this is thank you for bringing out such a critical issue. And this is one of the reasons we went for our own microprocessor, where we could have all the information at our hand rather than depending on someone for information. So with that, let me go on to the next speaker, Colonel Vivek Murthy. Can you please go ahead with your talk?
So first of all, very good morning to all the panel members and all those who are attending. Thanks to IISSM to giving me this opportunity to speak on this forum. As far as the point which was brought out by Colonel Ashish regarding Atmanirbhar and to have self-confidence in building of technologies, I feel now we are on the path of achieving this, and our efforts are very well in tune with how the developed worlds have been progressing in these many years. Now, coming to the topic, as far as the drone technologies is concerned, I would say the history is quite old. And I read it somewhere that it started somewhere at the time when somewhere around 1849, the first known air attack was carried out, where a group carried out its attack on Venice using a balloon with a bomb being dropped. So starting from there till now, the humankind has come to a very good distance as far as drone technologies and automated platforms is concerned. Notwithstanding, as far as the capabilities are concerned, as far as military capabilities are concerned, most of us are aware that the technologies have gone many folds. Recently, we've had F-16s, which has been developed into autonomous flying machines. We have helicopters which have been converted into autonomous machines. So similarly, the technological development has been growing leaps and bounds. Now, I'll come to the challenges which I feel are the most pertinent as far as today's scenario is concerned and how we need to carry it forward in future. Drones are a reality and they are going to expand in many folds, and with AI developing, there is no doubt about it that it is going to become autonomous. Now, how do we control them? One of the things which we require is regulations. Recent ones we saw in India being brought up by DGCA as far as the drone policy is concerned of 2018, then revised and coming up to 2021 and 22. But the other thing which we need to take care of is the airspace management. There will be so many agencies involved as far as controlling these drones and to ensure that they are not being utilized in the way in which one doesn't want them to be utilized. So here comes the requirement of an organization which is not just an organization which is a civil organization, just as a controlling a civil aviation agency which now looks into drones itself. We require a robust organization which can take care of all these flying machines which will not get restricted to just a few hundred feet or few 100 meters. They will, in due course of time, will go to thousands of kilometers, for which we require a separate system in place. And as far as their operations are concerned, these will go into the regime where they will become a system in itself. From normal small drones, miniature drones to heavier drones, they will require a system in place which will require them to be controlled, to be organized, and to be ensured that in no way they are being utilized other than for the purpose for which they've been developed. Now, the potential as far as India is concerned, one of the write-ups by PwC brought out that by the year 2030, it is expected that drones in India have a potential to have a business of about almost 1,800 crores. So with this kind of a development, we cannot isolate the requirement of corporate and think just on the terms of how the drones are to be developed and how they need to be utilized. The potential is very large, so therefore we require to have a very organized system to ensure not only their development but also their employability. Now, lastly, I'd like to talk about the technology about countering these drones. The previous speaker had talked about the counter technologies which they are developing. As Wing Commander Sudhakaran had brought out, that we need to look at the future. The future requires a technology which requires to operate in not just the RF, but at frequencies which are much higher than that, which will make it autonomous and to be able to control them. You can't have just simple technologies which can just bring them down. That will not be possible. Frequency hopping is one of the primary ways in which these drones are going to operate in future, and it's not easy to jam them. So this kind of future technologies for jamming such kind of drones is very much in requirement, and why those institutions and organizations which are looking into this can see their future in it. To sum it up, I would say that drone technology in India, keeping aside whatever is happening in the Western world, is going to be a huge thing. And as far as corporate security is concerned, it can be very much utilized when it comes not only to the physical security, but also utilized in conjunction with cybersecurity. It's a separate topic in itself and can be discussed in very much in detail as to how drones can be utilized in cybersecurity using AI, but notwithstanding, the potential is large. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Vivek Murthy. So you brought two important points. One is on the regulations, and the other is on the countering the drones. Thank you for bringing through these two issues. Probably the audience will have good amount of questions on these two. One of the comments that, at least with respect to regulations, is that when we come to security, we see that regulations are thrown to a terrorist does not bother about what regulations. He doesn't even care about a frequency in which you are operating. So I think that is going to be a big issue. After that regulations are broken, taking him to the legal system to show that the regulations are broken and then at least to get him punished, quote unquote, is, I think, next to impossible. And so I think that will be a huge challenge for us with respect to judiciary also in these kind of cases where you actually, someone violates the safety protocols and other things, is how do you punish that guy? Because if there is no punishment, everyone will be violating the protocol, just like red lights in the traffic signals. So I think that's going to be very interesting, because here we are also looking at, as you said, you are also looking at artificial intelligence. When you combine these three together, I think proving it in the court of law that it was not a human error and it was some machine which did it, will you punish the machine? So that's going to be a very important question that's going to arise in the future. I think we need a different viewpoint because all the people are from army or government agencies. So let us bring someone, Mahitosh, from the industry, British Telecom, very close to me because I did my PhD internship at British Telecom. So Mahitosh, please let me know your views on this.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege and honor to speak in front of you and to be in the panel with eminent people from the Army and Defense side. I am not from that field, but I am from the communication industry and I'll bring my perspective. And also thanks to Dr. Sain and IISSM for giving me this opportunity. So security is a very broad term, right? And in industry and government, there are various security contexts at different level, from individual to nationwide. And it has been traditionally deployed at securing the physical assets like government complexes, industrial complexes, schools, banks, offices, etc., and the national border. But now the other form of assets have come into the security portfolio. These includes assets of intellectual property like formulas, patents, virtual assets of personal data, online resources, electronic communication, and more recently virtual currencies too, which are not so popular today. But secured mode of communication is required to share information, which is critical to individual businesses and for countries. For privacy, competitive edge, businesses can just go down with the loss of information, and for national security. And we have to protect this transmission of information, because information is a key everywhere, on land, at sea, in air, in space, and everywhere between. In digital age, cyber security is, I think, much more important than ever before, and cyber crimes are rapidly growing. And threat faced today by the terrorists or by the rogue people is not bound by borders. As Wing Commander Sundhakaran also said earlier, that information is the key in today's warfare or in businesses. In cyberspace, there is no democracy, liberty, or sovereignty. It is the biggest threat to humanity. I think bigger than nuclear weapons, because they are just for defense and may not be used, but this is being used very, very actively. And with countries going very, very digital rapidly, and more assets and things available digitally, the need for securing it is much more. And with advent of 5G, IoT, more and more things will be there to be secured. And the sensors which collect data, radio gateways, servers that carry it, they're all integral to IoT. The thing is, many of these sensors are cheap to deploy and run, but unfortunately, they are also very, very vulnerable to attack. And with anticipated explosion, these numbers are expected to just rise. It is expected by 2025, there will be around 30 billion things to secure, 8 billion of personal data, and almost $10 trillion money to be lost in cybercrime. It's a universal challenge. If you just compare last year, it was expected that around 6 trillion US dollars were the damages caused by the global cybercrime. And if we drill down to a monthly, it is 500 billion and almost $200,000 per second. It's a mind-boggling number. And they can be caused by market crashes, infrastructure failure, secured communication being compromised, military bases going dark, they are no longer private networks, and mass deception of public, and all threatening to debilitate our way of life, our prosperity, and our democracy we cherish. And many organizations are working tirelessly to protect today's threat and tomorrow's risk. The adversaries are tenacious and they only need to be successful once, but we have to be careful and deterrent all the time. They just need to enter once. So there is a huge opportunity and scope for security business here. As long as there are assets to protect, organizations will have to come forward to protect it, both in public and private domain. Why it is important for India? Because cyber crimes are increasing super fast, and India was the second most cyber attacked country in Asia Pacific. The US, UK might have more deterrence, but threat is growing here in India. And the threat countered by security is like cyber attacks, which involves politically motivated information gathering, cyber terrorism to undermine the electronic systems to cause panic and fear, and also groups targeting for financial gains or to cause disruption. Right? on the physical security front itself, like we have a huge labor problem, right? Because we have to protect the transport hubs, home surveillance, monitoring large crowd, and etc. And with growing needs to address these security threats across organization, the teams are focused on the replacements of by these repeatable tasks of detecting and monitoring. And that's where I think these robots and drones are increasingly becoming popular of capability of, I think, capable of meeting these replacement needs. They are not only replacing, but also augmenting the existing surveillance capabilities. And one of the important feature of robots and drones is that they can access areas that could not be reached safely by and monitored by the humans, maybe remote oil or gas rigs, mining sites, and so on. And they can work uninterruptedly without getting tired or getting distracted. And adding video analytics, AI motion detection on that, facial recognition, this can become a very handy and important tool. Upon detection of these critical situations, robot can then later alert the staff to take necessary action. Right. So with huge proliferation of data, we have got the cheap computing now. So AI on top of robotics, drones, and cyber security infrastructure becomes the key. It is changing the paradigm of security. In many ways, I would say they are like marriage made in heavens, because AI helps in understanding patterns to see behavioral change before and after the event. And we have many cameras scattered, but not enough people watching it. But AI can help overcome that. It can detect anomalies and violent behaviors, and it has given the power to image recognition. We can have intruder detection in our house if the face doesn't matches the one in the known database, and so on. In whole this paradigm of artificial intelligence and safety and security, rapid detection and response is the key. From knowing something has happened and then reacting, we need to first predict and then prevent. And if not, then quickly detect and respond. For example, in the credit card theft, tap and pay, or skimming, there can be intelligence around where the credit card is being used. From a personal experience, like I was in UK where I had used it, and then I came back to India and used that card in the airport. After that, the card was being tried to be used in UK, but it was detected through the algorithms, right? That this is not the last location and maybe not a valid usage. Similarly, there was a discussion on the cars and everything being automated, right? We opening the cars, switching on the ACs and so on. And intelligence is required everywhere, as thieves are no longer doing the hot wiring to open the car. The anti-theft system needs to get advanced because they can just tap the signals which are being used to open that. All these are like double-edged swords, because these technologies are helping, but they are also helping our adversaries. It's AI can have biases, can have faulty algorithm, and mostly they are based on probabilities. They might not be fully learned or trained. Even I didn't speak a lot on drones because I'm not expert in that, but from a basic usage of drones, they have become immensely popular. They can be bought and flown anywhere. People use for different purposes, from filmmaking to photography, agriculture, and others, but they are also a rising threat in cybersecurity. There are many malicious use of drones because they pose a great threat to people's privacy. And there are reports of burglars using drones for scouting houses. With 3D imaging, Wi-Fi, they can help see through the walls and create a 3D image of the building. There are also incidences where drones are used for causing connection interruption and signal disturbances. And there are different ways cyber criminals are using the drones to carry data breaches. They can just carry a small computer attached to the drone and can be flown to places to exploit different kinds of vulnerabilities available. Right? So different solutions are required, different for military, different for these public consumptions for drones and robotics, and need for strong regulation. But to summarize from my perspective, the digital economy is growing rapidly. and it is going to be almost 20-25% of our country. So need a strong security framework. Critical infrastructures from financial services to power plants, manufacturing, everything is getting digitized, and increasing interconnectedness and proliferation of entry points is a great threat. Opportunity is huge for securing this both physical and digital infrastructure. As I said, AI, drones, robots are changing paradigm of security, but it is a double-edged sword, so we need to be careful on that. So organizations need to adopt these security drills and war gaming as part of standard operating procedure. There need to be awareness among the employees, among the larger population of the country, because it is better to be ready and practice in sunny days and prepare. So better to sweat in peace than bleed in war. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahitosh. So I think we are now converging on certain points. One is, as Mahitosh said, these drones, and as Colonel Ashish put it, these are utility drones. Okay, the utility drones that are being used for agriculture and the other aspects. Yes, we need to have this technology, no doubt about it. We need to have robotics, especially during disaster management. These kind of technologies are definitely useful. So that's one part of it. So, and for this, we have to create awareness among users that there are security vulnerabilities in these kind of devices. You need to undergo certain amount of training for these people. There should be certain amount of regulations. And what if someone, violates these regulations? Yes, there should be something to punish them for these violations. Yes, that's the first part. The second part is, he also said that we also come to know that, there is a double-edged sword, because these utility drones can be hacked, and you can steal data. Today, privacy becomes, if no other case is there, they put a case on privacy. So that has become a default for stopping any work. So similarly, these drones, since they intrude into the privacy of people, can be used for these kind of activities. Okay? Now, so therefore, this utility, and so we use, even the utility drones need to have some sort of a security. So that's very clear. The third part is, these drones are, when it comes to security, these drones are having to, they are having to start intelligence that is incorporated inside them. That's going to be a major challenge for us, because with intelligence, human intelligence, obviously we cannot process data at a much higher rate than what a computer does, but at least we can detect new ways of doing it, which the robots or any of these drones cannot do. So that is where our intelligence probably overtakes the drone intelligence. But for that, we need good amount of training, and this is where Colonel Ashish said that the teaching methods and other things have to change, because if you go to the web, you see thousands of papers published by academicians, and all those are Scopus index journals. If you go to academics, you will understand that's used for promotion and nothing else. So that's one part that could happen. So the last one that we also looked at is security by design. Okay, and the other part we also looked at was the swarm intelligence, because the artificial intelligence is one part and the swarm intelligence is the other part, because you need to have brains. If 10 people occupy a certain place, if 1,000 people go and occupy that place, I think there is no intelligence there, but it's only swarm intelligence, okay, 1,000 people going and occupying the position. So I think we have these kind of challenges. The most important challenge where we saw is, all these, at least for the security reasons, some of these equipments have to be manufactured within India. There is no other option. It would have probably 10% content could be from abroad. Because I had visited one of the drone manufacturing facility. I have visited companies right from, which get components from China and integrate it, and they call it as their own drone manufacturing facility. That's one part. And I have seen some facility where they import basic raw materials and then build the drones. Now, one of the problems there they see is that, as Colonel Ashish pointed out, was teaching, because they are saying that they are not getting good people who has enough knowledge of mathematics to contribute for the design of drones. It's a very important aspect, because not only manufacturing, and that's the first problem that we are facing. The second problem, at least at a personal level, when this government introduces this DLI, PLI and schemes like that, the first thing these companies come and ask is, how much money will the government give me? They are not talking about technology. I was very disappointed in one of the semiconductor conferences when the minister announced that, they are having DLI, PLI scheme. Many of these big corporates came and said, what is the amount? No one said that, we are contributing this much, we are going to contribute this technology. How much can the government support? That was not the question that was asked. The question that was asked is how much will the government give us as DLI and PLI? Now, this is dangerous for the country, okay, because this shows that the companies don't have intention to do anything in India other than getting, and I think China was one outstanding example where these kind of incentives actually destroyed the electrical vehicle industry. I mean, if you go to the web, you'll see that there are thousands of companies that got wiped out because they came up with false claims, false manufacturing data, and things like that. So this, depending on the government on DLI, PLI schemes, and then trying to see whether my technology will come up is not a solution. So this, with these kind of questions in hand, okay, so let me open up to the audience. I think we have about 15 minutes. Therefore, let me open up the questions to the audience. So audience, if you have any directed question towards any panelists, you're welcome. If you have a generic question, then I believe I can distribute it to the right person. So please go ahead. Any questions from the audience?
Dr. Sankraman, my question is, I'm concerned. My question is to the panel. I mean, maybe Colonel Assis can also answer. India is the, I mean, mother of all civilizations, and having the kind of intellect we have invented zero. And today we are talking about that we don't have the sufficient mathematicians to design a drone. This is something surprising. So what are the ways to attract more people towards mathematics and then to the scientific arenas where we design a circuitry based on the equations? Thank you.
Okay, luckily or unluckily, whatever, I have had the opportunity of being in a technical college, and as the dean there, academic dean, you realize certain aspects of education. One of the things that I actively tried to do was to get industry to tell us as to what is it that you want the students to know when they pass out so that they can become more employable in the companies. You know, companies, your telecom companies, Airtel, Vodafone, Reliance, not Reliance, Jio. So the problem is that the telecom companies may have certain ideas, but then that is not communicated with the engineering colleges. And not only that, the engineering colleges are also hand-bound to some extent by the syllabus which is already defined or which is laid down by the university and not by the colleges themselves. So the private colleges, or like places like Ashoka and other places where they design their own syllabuses, have some more of lead or some, some areas of play. In IITs, I've seen this thing also happening where people have been interacting with the industry directly and getting to know as to what areas are important, and accordingly, depending also, there are a lot of people who are funding various chairs and various lines of education so that it helps them in the industry. But that is in places, it's just spots. You take an engineering student who passes out today, maybe passing out with something like 70–90% overall score, but if you see his knowledge, maybe he'll have some knowledge about programming, but besides that, the basics of the engineering and the principles of engineering, does he have that or not, is something quite debatable. This, again, being in so I was heading the risk function in Wipro, and over there we also realized that the new recruits who are coming in, the amount of training that you have to give them for them to come up to your basic requirement is huge. So that's what I meant when I said that, okay, mathematics, or for that matter, theoretical aspects need to be honed, or rather your education system need to be honed towards the requirements of the industry. And really speaking, I think we are a long way in that area.
So probably I can add one more point. You see, when you make this drone, there is different kinds of stress that's come into the body of the drone as well as the fans and the motors all those components. Because if you have a drone that works out of liquid fuel like petrol, you have a kind of thermal engineering coming into picture. Now, we have seen that there is, people are not able to understand where the stress will be. For example, when the drone lifts off like this and then flows like this, where all the stress? Now, these are all very essential when you are looking at manufacturing of drones, because you are looking at security, fail-safe drones. You can't have a drone flying to 15 kilometers and then falling down. Okay, and not only the drone falls down in their enemy area, you also reveal the technology that you are using. So these kind of issues, so fundamentally, as Colonel Ashish said, there is a huge gap between what is required for these kind of technologies and what is being imparted in the engineering colleges. Yes, sir. There is another question. So please introduce yourself and then please ask the question.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Brigadier Jasbinder Singh, and I have an observation for comments by the panel, sir. While the use of drones is a foregone conclusion, when we are discussing security or the corporate security or the civilian security, we need to firstly differentiate between the military application of the drones and the civilian application of the drones, which are in terms of recreation or commercial purposes. I think one of the panelists, Mahitosh, had brought out in passing that there is a need to differentiate between that. Other than this, in India, we have certain regulations in place. These are the Drones Regulation 2021, which everyone must be aware of, wherein you are required to be registered with the DGCA for flying a drone. Now, when we talk of the drone, we also required a trained pilot who requires a license again from the DGCA. Now, again, in the terms of drones, when we talk, I think somewhere down the line, we miss the line between the rotary drones and the fixed wing drones. And I'm sure it is the rotary drones which have more application in the civilian domain than the fixed ones, because fixed ones will have issues of takeoff, recovery, whereas the rotary ones are the VTOL drones. We also have regulations that in India, the nano drones can be only be flown up to, I think, 50 feet height, and maybe that is less than 2 kgs. In addition to that, the micro drones, which may have only applications in surveillance, which is only up to, I think, 250 grams, and only the DRDO has been able to make a micro drone in India as of today. We can import it. But we need to take all these issues when we are discussing security with the corporate. Military applications is totally different. So, your comments on this, please.
So yes, you put some points, but then I will slightly disagree with you. First of all, there's understanding that drones will only be flown by pilots is a non-starter to begin with, and I'll tell you why. Why are we using drones? Let's come to the commercials, the corporate side. Let's talk about the non-military side. We're using it for cost disruption. We're using it for optimization. When you talk about a drone pilot, today, I've seen various training programs. It costs almost a lakh, 65,000, 80,000 rupees for a certification. And that guy thinks that he's a pilot. Now, drones will become commercially viable only when you operate in scales, which means that I need numbers in the sky. If, for example, let's talk about a pizza delivery. If he has only one drone, it's not going to make sense for him. He needs to have at least 30 to 40 to 50 drones, which will do real time throughout the day. That's when his delivery boys will get subsumed or optimized. Now, do we think that we're going to hand over these 50 drones to 50 pilots, or one pilot is going to handle 3 or 4 drones? Practically not possible. That's the framework that we work on. What DGCA has put on as a policy is practically not viable. In fact, I know of at a senior level, because military decides whether commercial drones will fly or not. Because the moment there is going to be an incident, because air defense is not in the civilian domain at all. There is an overlap here. We cannot say that I will differentiate it, and this is not like running a commercial gypsy and then you're running a military vehicle for military operations. It doesn't work like that. If I say I have put a regulation on the sky, there are no traffic lights there. If somebody decides to fly something with an RF, you need the native capability to identify a rogue drone out of the 100 drones that are flying. How are you going to distinguish that? That is where we talk about drones will work in the future or will make commercial sense only when we operate them in swarms. And that's where swarm intelligence comes into play and swarm intelligence frameworks come into play, which means any drone with outside this framework will be a rogue drone. And how do we optimize it, understand it? That's part of the security framework that we orchestrate and design. And this, when we use for commerce, military usage will be a byproduct of that, because again, why I say that is, our boundaries are almost 3,000 kilometers. If we talk about using a drone, the area of responsibility of drone is not more than 20, 25, 30, 35 kilometers. Now, if I were to cover inch by inch, you're talking about thousands of drones, which the military cannot afford to buy or operate, and lest be operated by human beings. So it has to be operated under an autonomous regime, one to begin with. Two is this concept of drone pilots is a non-starter. Probably we can talk about a command center operator in which 4 or 5 guys are going to control 1,000-odd drones, but then that is going to be in the autonomous regime. Yes, it can deliver pizzas, it can deliver any couriers, that is possible. But when you have already made that framework, we tend to get jumbled by DGCA policies because DGCA is making policies. In fact, once I asked, sir, how are you going to implement this as part of one of the federations? And they said, in any case, we were supposed to make a policy, we made it. Now the whole world is making a policy. Somebody will come up with the policy, we will copy it. Just like how the Constitution was copied. We have so many archaic British laws still part of our Constitution. And we think that we made it. We can't do that for drones. So there is a lot of thought process under this. We need a lot of indigenous frameworks to be developed for this. And as far as military-civilian differentiation is concerned, in fact, military air defense will come out of the business optimization that you will generate in the commerce. You will find thousands of drones for supply chain logistics. But those the drones, in their flying time, will do security as a consequence and byproduct. That's my take on future.
Dr. Shankar, I'd just like to add here. From my organization, BT, who is a communication company, right? So what we are doing around the unmanned aerial vehicles, because as Sudhakaran said, right, they will be unmanned for the swarm. And what we are doing a lot of projects around the 4G and 5G networks we have to ensure how the commercial drones will remain connected for greater situational awareness, accurate positioning, and to avoid collisions. Because we are also working through a project Accelerate, where we are trying to create a commercial drone corridor so that it can have an unrestricted airspace where both automated drones and manned aviation can safely coexist. I just thought I'll bring this point because we are using the 4G and 5G from our communication capabilities to help drone navigation.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Yes, sir, please.
Sir, so in the current dispensation, what you brought out, you mean to say that the remote pilot license, which is currently being issued by the DGCA, is a non-starter? That is the first issue. And the second issue is in the terms of the height and the swarm which you're talking of. How are you visualizing that this will take off from the security point of view at the commercial level, not at the military level?
Sir, the answer is there in your question itself. If you can't trust today a vehicle, we don't know whether a vehicle laden with bomb will be driven into the next hotel or not. You know, there are possible checks and balances that is possible. can I trust drones in 50,000 hands in 1 lakh hands or probably 1 million hands inside this country? Anybody can get bonkers, can just dive a drone down into somebody's head. That's the security nightmare that we will face with if we are going to give remote pilot license. We need to answer that question. We need to take the pilot out of the loop first. Second is, if a pilot comes in, what is the daily rate that he's going to charge per hour for operating a drone? That will make it unviable for using the drone itself. Say, for example, agricultural spraying. If a guy is going to go there, operate a drone, and he is going to charge 1,500 rupees minimum, which is a minimum. In fact, if he charges 1,500 rupees, it is 45,000 rupees salary that he's going to get. He has to travel 60 kilometers, 50 kilometers to a field. Add the cost of transportation. It's absolutely a non-starter to begin with. Whoever has thought of it, they don't understand drones then. That's why I say you need to take human out of the loop. Let's not waste those youngsters and fool them into belief that they're going to be pilots of the future. They are not. We will need probably 4 or 5 operators for every 1,000 drones. That's the training that they might get, but they're not pilots. That's the first part of the question. Sir, the second part of the question that you asked, can you repeat it?
Swarm. It's on Swarm. He's talking about.
From the security perspective, the security is going to be inbuilt within the Swarm intelligence framework itself. I work on this, so that's why I can commend. In fact, I've worked with IIT Kanpur. I've worked with the Air Force on this because I'm principally an air defense guy apart from being an IT and AI. I worked in missiles and I spent 10 years guarding the air defense of this country. So from that connotation, if you ask me, one is real-time identification of drones. For example, if me and you are walking in street, there is an optical identification. I understand whether you are an Indian or not. If there is something suspicious about you, if I think that you could be a Lashkar-e-Taiba or an Al-Qaeda operative, the first thing that I do is report. I might not come and directly engage in a combat with you. That's what drone frameworks of tomorrow's will do. Real-time identification, friend or foe, in the air. And how is this done? Because when thousands of drones are going to be swarmed in the skies, every drone would need, through a real-time blockchain, authenticate themselves. I met you, I'm so-and-so, you are so-and-so, and this is my flying key on which I am flying in this route. Now, this is shared on a blockchain, and this blockchain could get... So there are many such frameworks which are under work now, but unfortunately, we have this penchant to work in silos. And that's why different people exist in different islands. I hope once these islands will merge and we will become one country from the technology perspective.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
let me just threaten you further after what he said. See, so the point is that, all his argument as of now has been that he trusts the hardware, right? Only after that he is looking at blockchain. Now, that's a fundamental question that we raised during our debate, that there is one company which is now manufacturing the mobile phones, and they are not giving you even information about whether their hardware itself is trustable. So you're putting so many electronics into your drones. Now, is it reliable though? That's the first question we're supposed to ask, because as he says, if you have a processor which will malfunction at a particular, or someone has the ability to make the processor malfunction at their intended points in time, this is be a disaster. The second point about manufacturing, these drones have motors, the copper wires. Now, copper wires less than a particular size has to be imported from China. There is no manufacturing facility in India. The one manufacturing facility that was there, you closed it due to environmental issues. I'm not telling the state, okay? Now, the point is now we are dependent on them for these small cables. The bigger cables, yes, India can do. What is the guarantee that the small cables that you get have the material strength that it is supposed to have, or the conductivity it's supposed to have, and it's not there? So I leave it open. So it's our job in the industry, or what you have seen practically, to raise the fear among people who can go back to decision-making bodies and then put these questions to them.
Last issue is again addressed to Wing Commander Sudhakaran. What is the efficacy of this interactive digital map which has been given by the DGCA, which spells out those 3 zones, yellow, green and red, in which you need to fly? How is it valuable to the from the security point of view to the corporates, please? Thank you.
My opinion, sir, it's a good login and exercise. We've logged in into the system. So beyond that, I don't want to say good, bad, ugly. You can have a map, but do I have a control if somebody misbehaves? It needs to be total. It needs to be holistic. It needs to be converged. These are aspects we don't deal with. We deal with half-hearted measures because we have deadlines. Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75th year, let's have 75 maps. Technologies don't get rolled out like that. We need to be far more professional when we deal with such subjects. I'll leave it at that.
There are two questions which has come from online and social media. One is again on drone, and this possibly is asked to Colonel Vivek Murthy. Even and the question has been asked by Dinesh Singh Rawat. He says that even at present we do not have any cogent solution to tackle drones which are causing problems on the borders, especially Pak border for agency like VSF. What would happen when in future we see swarm drones?
I think Colonel Vivek Murthy, I think it's addressed to you.
As far as the technology available with the defense forces is concerned, they are still in the process of procurement and deployment. I would not comment as to exactly what is the technology available and what is the technology we are using as of now. But notwithstanding, this is a process which is still needs a lot of effort and a lot of things to be looked into. About a year back, there were a lot of incidents where we had the drones coming inside India from our western borders, and we had the famous incident in Pathankot. But notwithstanding that, the technology which is presently available and we are dependent on is broadly coming from the civil world and not from the DRDO specifically. So that is very much relevant, and that is something which the organization understands, and therefore at various levels these things are being discussed and things are being brought into perspective. But this is something which is a challenge. There's no doubts about it, and that the organization is taking necessary measures to counter it, but it will take time. It is not something which is going to happen overnight.
Thank you. The question which has come from the social media, first Mr. Siva Kumar is asking, as you said that there is no dearth of mathematical minds to design drones, or words to that effect. Though it is little different from security related question but related to knowledge. When you talk of supercomputers, is there a case that we would be needing mathematical minds along with Sanskrit tomorrow?
Sir, I leave it to Colonel Ashish Mukherjee. So probably I will add to that.
Why me? Okay, but Sanskrit, for that matter, those people who have gone into it is quite mathematical in nature, from what I understand. Not that I have studied Sanskrit myself very much. But the point is, I don't think language is so much of a matter. The point is, if you look at all the programming languages, you find some similarities across the table, or used to be. Nowadays, though, you have a whole lot of new languages which are also coming in. Languages which are specifically designed for artificial intelligence and all that is totally new ball game altogether. But are we really teaching students the latest in programming? That's only in a very few selected institutes, okay, where they can come out and start programming for high-level stuff. That is very, very limited. The kind of programming that we do is very rudimentary today in a general engineering college. And if you expect those people to help in programming swarm of drones, I don't think that's happening very much soon. So ultimately what's going to happen is any company which is into drone control or this swarm control, automation of pizza, for example, delivery, you cannot possibly have a number of people controlling which drone is going which and which direction. It has to be automated. So it has to be something like Tesla in the sky. The point is that the whole thing is to be driven by a software which is very, very reliable, very, very reliable. And all these things about identification as to who else is running around, and that has to be global. A Pizza Hut guy cannot go and hit a Domino's guy. That will not work. Okay, so all these things require a high level of sophistication in the software, which I think the companies themselves will have to develop. The regulation I don't see coming in for a long time.
So let me add something to this. See, okay, he's mentioning about Sanskrit. Okay, let's not look at the language. Let's look at what is behind that language. Now, the amount of thinking that has gone into that language, that is exactly what is needed in a programming sense also. Because you take a Sanskrit language from 40 rules, and then based on that, there is a whole language that has come up. Similarly, if you can have that kind of concise, precise thinking, that is what a programmer needs. Okay, a computer programmer it's not a question of how many languages he knows. It's a question of how much concise, precise thinking he can put into the computer through his brain. That's what a programming language is all about. So when we are talking about this thinking capability comes through mathematics. Now, the problem we have today is, for example, designing of drones, the most important thing we are having is partial differential equations. Now, please ask any student in the university what he has understood about partial differential equations. Say dou y by dou x, take off dou and dou, you get y by x. This is what they tell you. Okay? So, now this is where the fundamental problem is. Now, these companies are struggling to recruit good engineers. Okay? It may not be known outside, okay, but this is a fact. So, unless we solve this problem, anything on security, drones is going to be beyond us. I think some 10 years back, Kaspersky came to India and he said that we don't have good mathematicians, therefore I'm not going to start a company in India. Forget about Kaspersky, who that guy is, but what he said is relevant even today. Okay? So unless we can talk about security, AI, ML, we do not understand that programming is a tool, but what goes behind is the thinking of the person. And I think if that is not structured, I think we lose this race, because machines are going to think faster than human beings. And if human creativity doesn't bring, and if this much population, if we don't have creativity, all these issues are going to exist, which is going to destroy us.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Ajay Singh, and I work in Hayat Place, Gurugram. I would be happy to hear my answer from Wing Commander Sudhakaran sir. Actually, drones are permitted in the events, which my friends have already covered in their talk. My question is from security point of view. In the hotel, we allow the guest to cover their event at a certain height. But is there any existing policy, or is it in the making process, so that we can declare our property that it is no flying zone for drones? And not only our property, if a drone is capable to look away, while keeping away from our property, it can look and record the event. And it is a privacy breach if it comes to hotel and farmhouses. So my question is there any policy as per state government or central government, so that we can get declared our property as a no-flying zone for all type of drones? Thank you.
So before I start, you will lose business, so be careful about it.
Thank you. Actually, you are now talking about you own a property for sure, but the air above you technically is not owned by you. So when you say I declare it as a no-fly zone, there would be many people who want to do the same, which means that do you even prevent aircrafts from flying over it? So when you say no-fly zone, it is not drone-specific. You are talking drone-specific, but the legality doesn't imply drone-specific. So one is To the best of my knowledge, because I don't deal deeply into it, I'm more of a technology person. I look at solving problems. So from that perspective, I can safely tell such a regulation doesn't exist. But if somebody is violating your privacy, you can definitely walk into the next police station, go and file a complaint, right? If somebody is deliberately doing it, repeatedly doing it. Third part is, if somebody is recording your event, making commercial sense out of it, you can sue them and probably charge them more than what he is making. I hope that answers most three parts of the question that you've asked.
Just one point. I mean, for my knowledge more than anything else, if someone was sitting on top of the EIL building and recording what's happening in Hyatt, how will Hyatt people even get to know it's happening? EIL, I think, is one of the tall buildings which is in Bikajigama, which is right next to the Hyatt hotel. Anyone?
Yes, sir. Technology is such that you can look at 20 kilometers from one of the drones. Now you will not even know that you are being monitored. Yes, they can optically zoom and find out. So it's going to be extremely difficult.
In fact, yesterday I was in a lecture, in a talk. There are 3,200 satellites on your head, and that's by Starlink. And today we have a technology called hyperspectral imaging, which can look at 7 layers down inside your equipment and can tell you what material your nut is bolt is made out of, right? So I think we are talking very elementary stuff when we're talking about drone and privacy violation.
I think what we need is some magazine coming out with pictures of some party which has happened in some farmhouse, and with a lot of VIPs, maybe a few ministers around, catch them in compromising positions, and then immediately you'll find some regulations coming in.
Just to talk about regulations, the latest one which has come in 2022 by the DGCA, it talks about some part of it. It says that how you can stop people from doing unauthorized flying of drones, which lays out the punishments and it lays down as to what is the procedure. So in case if such thing has happened, then one can always approach the police station as it was brought out, and then you can check as to whether the permission was taken or not. That is only in case if you're aware that such a drone is flying in the vicinity.
So any other questions? So I think if there are no more questions, I think you can end the session. Would that be okay, sir? Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to thank IISSM for having invited me to this talk, and then asking me to heading the panel. I thank all the panel members for their wonderful views. I think we have threatened you enough that what your takeaway is that go back to your drawing boards, and then please, when you are in certain panels, committees, we would like you to share these kind of information and then threaten them too. See, unless fear is instilled, things don't get done. So I think unless we get a fear of what we are looking at in the future, we are not going to save ourselves. So thank you very much for your questions. We really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. And I thank IISM for arranging this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.